Hiya Five, so this is English Lesson 2, okay? Week commencing the 1st of June. The skill we're looking at is I manage shifts in time and place effectively and guide the reader through my text. Okay, so this is Lesson 2. Again, these are all on the website for you. And it is to learn why shifts in time happen in a story. Okay, we may not actually get onto that until really fully until lesson 3, but we're beginning really this lesson objective today to learn why shifts in time happen. So we're going to go back to talking about the tornado chaser. So you answered some questions last lesson based on those. So question 1, did the story begin at the start? Well, we know it didn't. It jumped forward in time to chapter 11. Chapter 11 is really told to us in chapter 1, and then in chapter 11 we realise what chapter 1 was all about. Okay, question 2, did the beginning of chapter 1 make sense? No, it didn't make sense straight away. Why? Because we didn't know what was happening. Why was he locked in his room? Why was there no furniture? What was going on? Why had he missed out on a plan that they were meant to be doing? What plan? Who's Callum Brenner knocking on his window? So many questions going on in chapter 1 that weren't really explained straight away. Question 3. Did chapter 1 of the Tornado Chasers cause you to question things? Yes. And then you wrote down some of the questions which you might ask, and I've just said some of mine now. Question 4. Why does the author begin with drama? That again, I feel the author begins in a dramatic way to draw the reader in and keep the reader interested and to make the story more exciting. Okay, question 5. Why doesn't the start make sense straight away? Well, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't start at the beginning, if you like. It starts in the present. It doesn't start at the very start of this story unfolding. Okay, it's really giving us a snippet of what's going to happen in the future, and then we go back in chapter 2 where the story unfolds, and so that's really why it doesn't make sense at the start. Question 6. Why is Owen locked in his bedroom? Do we know straight away? No, we don't know. The answer is no. We don't know why he's locked in his bedroom. We don't know what's going on. Okay. 7. Why does chapter 1 start by jumping forward in time? Again, I think I've repeated that really. That's the same as... But it's really a shift in time for a purpose. It's for emotional effect on the reader. It's meant to alarm the reader. It's meant to make the reader feel sorry for this child, upset or confused. It's meant to have an emotional impact on the reader. Okay, that's why the writer starts in this dramatic way in chapter 1. Question 8, why does chapter 2 jump back in time to the beginning? Well, chapter 2 has to take us back to the beginning, really, or what could have happened is chapter 1 could have continued in the present, if you like, for longer and then gone back to the start. So you could have had chapter 1, 2, 3 or 4, given us those events, and then you could have gone back to the retell of the events that led up to that point. However, this author decides we're only going to do one chapter and then I'm going to go back to the beginning in chapter 2. So that's what chapter 2 jumps back in time to the beginning in order for us to understand the background of what's happened leading up to the event in chapter 1. Okay, so that's just a little recap of last lesson. Lesson 2 then. So, okay, we've talked about the tornado chasers. We've talked about how the writer has shifted back forward in time in chapter 1 and then back in time in chapter 2. Shifts in time happen to guide the reader through the text, okay? The shift back in time in chapter 2 is guiding the reader to the very start of how it all began and then taking the reader on a journey which will lead the reader in chapter 11 to understand what happened back in chapter 1, and chapter 1 then makes sense. Okay, so I've got a task for you to do on this sheet. This is lesson 2, you can find it on the website. Task 1. Okay, I want you to think about a film you have watched. Sorry, I've just moved the stand a bit there. I just don't think it's done much. Okay, so think about a story, a film rather, that you've watched. When the storyline jumps forward and back. I mean, I've watched lots of films and I've thought, hold on, this film's jumping back and forth, and lots of films do that, Some people love it because it adds drama. Other people get confused by it and they think, well, what's going on now? Where am I now? it's really to make it more interesting and exciting. So it's not just, one step at a time through, but from beginning to end. Films always jump back and forth. Well, at least many of them do. Characters have flashbacks, they have memories. A film will flash back to a conversation that a couple had. That conversation led to the event which we saw previously, and and films do this, and stories do it too. Okay, so think about a film you've watched when the storyline jumps forward and back in time, and then gradually builds and unfolds as the story goes on. They do it too, and they might start a film with a dramatic event. I've seen films where they start with a drama, with a police chase, or they start with a disaster of some kind, and then you go back to all the events that led up to that point. Some films even start with a snippet from the actual ending of a film. They don't see how the film ends as far as the final ending until the end, but you see a little bit of part of the ending, if you like, at the very start. Some stories begin with a snippet from the conclusion. Okay, in the Tornado Chasers, it's a snippet from really a climax event. Okay. Right, think about authors doing this in writing. Think about the Tornado Chasers. The story beginning with a dramatic event, a problem, in other words. And then chapter 2, taking us back and to the very beginning of how it all started, and beginning to build in chapter 2, 3, 4, 5. All those chapters build in the storyline up to chapter 11, which is actually back in chapter 1. Okay, linked to chapter 1. So this is your next task. Okay, here. All right, so I want you to do a little bit of a paragraph explaining, basically. So why is it good to start the story by jumping forward in time in this way? So in other words, why, I want a paragraph explaining why is it good that the author started chapter 1 of the Tornado Chasers, okay, by jumping, if you like, forward in time to an event that's happened further on in the story. Why is it good that the writer didn't start chapter 1 from the very beginning? Why is it good that chapter 2 is the beginning and chapter 1 is something from the future? What is good about that? I want a paragraph explaining to me, and you can do it as a PEE. So point, evidence, explain. So make a point. I think that the writer I think the writer has made the story more exciting and interesting, and added emotional effect by starting with a dramatic event in chapter 1, for example. That could be a point that you've made. Your evidence could be, for example, in chapter 1, it talks about Owen being in his room, he's and you could quote some examples from the story, and you could then say this links to chapter 11 in the story. This is all part of your evidence. So chapter 1's actually a flashback, a kind of like a snippet from the future, and you can go on to say in your explanation, this is why it's exciting to the reader. So PEE, point, evidence, and explain. Okay, you could do it like that, or you could just write a paragraph for me, just telling me why it works, why is it successful, what's good about starting the Tornado Chasers in that way. So you've got the chapter on the website. I've putting it on there for you. So you've got the whole of chapter 1, you can read it. Okay, and when you've read it, I want you to explain to me in a paragraph why is it good that the writer has started with a dramatic beginning based on something that's happened further into the storyline. Okay? All right, so that's the end of lesson 2 then. Next lesson we'll be concentrating on focusing a little bit more in depth about why shifts in time happen in story writing. Okay, see you next lesson. Bye.